Prejudice hides behind small-town manners. In a quiet diner, two deputies close in on an elderly black couple, anniversary celebrating and savoring a peaceful morning together. The officers expect submission, their threats as casual as coffee refills. They have no idea who's about to walk in. The couple's son, a Marine Corps veteran whose silence hides decades of discipline and resolve. With each escalation, the deputies are sure they hold all the power, until one moment shatters that illusion, and the man they try to intimidate becomes the reckoning they never saw coming. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Through the bedroom window, morning light spilled across Evelyn Carter's face as she watched the sleepy town of Millbrook come to life. The same view she'd known for 47 years, past the neat row of mailboxes, down the gentle slope of Oak Street, where young maple trees now stood tall and proud. Her fingers traced idle patterns on the window glass, leaving faint marks that faded like old memories. Behind her, floorboards creaked with familiar footsteps. Samuel entered carrying two steaming coffee mugs, the rich aroma filling their sun-warmed bedroom. His measured movements spoke of age, but his back was straight as ever, his dignity intact despite the years. "Your coffee, Miss Evelyn," he said softly, using the playful formality that had been their private joke since their teaching and postal service days. His voice was warm, though something uncertain flickered in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she replied, accepting the mug with both hands. The ceramic was hot against her palms, grounding her in the moment. She took a careful sip, watching Samuel over the rim. His Sunday best was pressed and ready on the bed, the navy suit she'd helped him pick out last spring. "You're up early," Samuel noted, settling into the cushioned chair by the dresser. "Thinking about our plans?" Evelyn's smile wavered slightly. "Just watching the town wake up. Remember how quiet these streets used to be on Saturday mornings? Now look at all these people rushing about." "Times change," Samuel said, "but some things stay the same." He paused, studying her. "You're still worried about going to Main Street Diner, aren't you?" The question hung between them, heavy with last night's discussion. Evelyn set her coffee down on the windowsill. "I just think maybe we could have a nice celebration here at home. I could make your favorite chicken and dumplings." "Evelyn." Samuel's voice was gentle but firm. "We've had this conversation. I won't have my wife cooking on her own anniversary. Besides," he added with a small smile, "you know how I feel about those maple pecan pancakes Linda makes." "The diner's changed, Samuel. The whole town has. It's not like it was when Marcus was little and we'd take him there for ice cream sodas." She twisted her wedding band, a nervous habit of decades. "Maybe we should try that new place over in the place across town?" Samuel set his mug down with a decisive clink. "No. Main Street Diner has been our anniversary tradition for 30 years. I won't have us skulking off somewhere else just because—" He trailed off, jaw tightening. "Just because what?" Evelyn turned from the window fully now, her voice soft but challenging. "Just because last month Mrs. Henderson's boy and his partner gave you those looks? Just because people whisper sometimes? Just because some folks in this town still can't stomach seeing a dignified black couple enjoying their breakfast in peace?" Samuel finished, his words careful and measured despite the fire in his eyes. "Which is exactly why we're going. I won't have fear or foolishness steal our joy. Not today. Not after all these years." Evelyn crossed to him then, laying a hand on his shoulder. She felt the tension there, the stubborn strength that had carried him through decades of slights and suspicions. "I don't want trouble, Samuel. Not on our day. Living in fear is trouble enough," he replied, covering her hand with his own. His wedding band caught the morning light, Remember our first anniversary? That little cafe in Birmingham? Despite herself, Evelyn smiled. Where the waitress accidentally spilled coffee all over your new tie. And you just smiled, cleaned yourself up, and ordered another cup. And tipped her extra, Samuel chuckled. Said maybe it would help sweeten that sour disposition of hers. You were always braver than me, Evelyn sighed, squeezing his shoulder. No. Samuel stood, drawing her close. You were the one who marched. Who taught those children when half the town said you shouldn't. Who stood by me when... He swallowed hard. When the rumors started. Through everything. They stood in silence for a moment, holding each other as the morning light strengthened around them. Outside, a car horn honked. Children's laughter drifted up from the street. I suppose I should get dressed then, Evelyn said finally, managing a small smile. Can't have my husband taking me to breakfast in my housecoat. That's my girl. Samuel kissed her forehead. Wear that yellow dress, the one with the flowers. You light up the room in that one. Evelyn nodded, then gathered her courage along with her clothes. As she dressed, she watched Samuel straighten his tie in the mirror, his movements precise and dignified, as always. The familiar ritual of preparation settled her nerves somewhat. When they were both ready, Samuel offered his arm with an old-fashioned flourish. Shall we, Mrs. Carter? Evelyn slipped her arm through his, feeling the strength there, the years of standing tall together. They made their way down the stairs and to their front door, where morning sunshine waited to greet them. It's going to be a beautiful day, Samuel said, as they stepped onto their porch together, the warm light washing over their faces. Trust me, my love. This will be an anniversary to remember. The bell above Main Street Diner's door chimed as Samuel held it open for Evelyn. The familiar scent of coffee and maple syrup wrapped around them, a sweet reminder of countless Saturday mornings spent in these worn booths. Sunlight streamed through the large front windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air and highlighting the faded red cushions. Linda Harper looked up from behind the counter, her face breaking into a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Well, if it isn't my favorite couple. She hurried over, wiping her hands on her apron. Happy anniversary, you two. Thank you, Linda, Evelyn said softly, her grip tightening slightly on Samuel's arm as she noticed several heads turn their way. A middle-aged man at the counter quickly returned to his newspaper. Two women in a corner booth exchanged whispers behind their menus. Your usual spot is waiting for you, Linda said, leading them to their favorite booth by the window. The vinyl seats squeaked as they settled in, Samuel helping Evelyn with her light jacket before sitting down himself. Linda handed them their laminated menus, though they all knew they were just for show. Coffee's fresh, and I just pulled a batch of those maple pecan pancakes out of the kitchen. She winked at Samuel. Had a feeling you might be stopping by today? You know me too well, Samuel chuckled, his deep voice carrying across the diner. A few more heads turned, and Evelyn noticed a young mother pull her child closer in the booth across from them. Just give me a minute, Linda said, touching Evelyn's shoulder gently. I've got something special for today. As Linda walked away, Evelyn studied the familiar cracks in the Formica tabletop, tracing one with her fingernail. Maybe we should have come earlier, she murmured. It's getting crowded. This is exactly when we always come, Samuel replied, his voice low but firm. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. We're not doing anything wrong, Evelyn. She nodded, trying to relax her shoulders. The diner's usual Saturday buzz surrounded them. The clink of silverware, the hiss of the coffee maker, scattered conversations about weekend plans and local gossip. Through it all, she could feel the weight of sideways glances, the subtle shifting of bodies away from their booth. Linda returned carrying a small crystal vase filled with yellow daisies and white baby's breath. Every anniversary deserves flowers, she declared, setting them in the center of the table. She leaned in close, lowering her voice. "Don't you two pay any mind to folks around here. This is your day." Evelyn felt tears prick at her eyes. "Linda, you didn't have to—" "Hush now," Linda interrupted kindly. "I've known you both too long to do any less." She straightened up, pulling out her order pad. "Now, let me guess. Maple pecan pancakes for the gentleman, and a Western omelet for the lady." Samuel's face softened into a real smile. "With extra cheese, hash browns, extra crispy," Linda finished, scribbling. "And 2 coffees, cream for Mrs. Carter, black for Mr. Carter." She tucked her pencil behind her ear. "Coming right up." As Linda walked away, Evelyn found herself relaxing slightly. The flowers really were lovely, their bright petals catching the morning light. She remembered similar flowers in her wedding bouquet all those years ago. "See?" Samuel said softly. "Some things don't change. Linda's still Linda." "Yes," Evelyn agreed, managing a small smile. She watched Linda chat easily with other customers, her presence somehow making the space feel safer. The diner's ancient ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, and the coffee machine hissed out another pot of fresh brew. A young waitress brought their coffee, setting the cups down without meeting their eyes. Samuel thanked her anyway, his dignity unwavering. He doctored Evelyn's coffee just the way she liked it, 2 creams stirred carefully, before sliding it across to her. "Remember our first time here?" he asked, sipping his own coffee. "Must have been 82, 83? Marcus was just learning to read the menu by himself." Evelyn's smile grew more natural. "He insisted on ordering for all of us. Pronounced quesadilla, like Queen Sadilia." The memory warmed her more than the coffee. Linda let him practice reading the specials board every Saturday after that. Through the large front window, morning traffic moved steadily down Main Street. The hardware store across the way was putting out its sidewalk display, and old Mr. Jenkins was sweeping the sidewalk in front of his barber shop like he'd done every Saturday for decades. The scene was so normal, so familiar, that Evelyn almost missed it when the black and white patrol car pulled into a spot directly across from their window. The car's chrome gleamed in the sunlight as Deputy Royce stepped out, adjusting his belt with practiced authority. Officer Henderson emerged from the passenger's side, scanning the street with the wary look of a man expecting trouble. Samuel's hand found hers again as the officers started toward the diner's entrance. His grip was steady, but she felt the slight tension in his fingers. The bell above the door chimed again, and this time the sound seemed sharper, more intrusive in the suddenly quiet space. The diner's cheerful morning buzz died as Deputy Royce and Officer Henderson stepped inside. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths, and coffee cups settled back into their saucers with soft clinks. Even the radio playing oldies behind the counter seemed to fade into background static. Evelyn watched as Linda's welcoming smile tightened at the corners. The owner stood straighter, coffee pot gripped firmly in her hand as she nodded to the officers. "Morning, gentlemen. Coffee." "Not today, Linda," Royce drawled, removing his mirrored sunglasses with deliberate slowness. His eyes swept across the diner in what he probably thought was a casual manner, but Evelyn recognized the predatory assessment in his gaze. When his look landed on their booth, it lingered just a moment too long. Henderson followed close behind, thumbs hooked in his utility belt. The fluorescent lights gleamed off his badge as he positioned himself near the counter, creating a clear sight line to the Carter's table. His presence seemed to take up more space than his actual size warranted. Samuel took another sip of his coffee, his movements measured and calm. But Evelyn saw the slight tremor in his hand as he set the cup down, heard the barely audible sigh that escaped his lips. Under the table, his knee pressed against hers, a silent gesture of reassurance they'd perfected over decades. "Just doing our routine morning patrol," Royce announced to the diner at large, though his attention remained fixed on their corner, making sure everything's in order. He began walking between the tables, pausing here and there to exchange pleasantries with regular customers he knew by name. The closer he got to their booth, the more Evelyn's stomach tightened. She focused on the yellow daisies Linda had brought, counting petals to steady her nerves. 7, 8, 9. Well, well, Royce's voice cut through her counting. He stood at the edge of their table now, one hand resting casually on his belt, close to his holster. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, don't usually see you folks out this time of day. It's our anniversary, Samuel replied evenly, his deep voice carrying the same dignity it had held through 50 years of similar encounters. We're regular customers here. Anniversary? Henderson called from his spot by the counter. Ain't that sweet? How long you two been around these parts anyway? The question carried a sharp edge beneath its surface politeness. Evelyn's fingers curled around her coffee cup. We've lived here our whole lives, she said quietly. Born and raised. That right? Royce pulled out his notepad, though he made no move to write anything down. Mind if I see some ID? Just routine, you understand. Had some reports of suspicious activity in the area. Samuel's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Is there a particular reason you need to see our identification, Deputy? We're just having breakfast. The diner had gone completely silent now. Even the kitchen sounds had hushed, and Evelyn could feel every eye in the place fixed on their booth. Linda stood frozen behind the counter, coffee pot still in hand, her face a mask of carefully controlled concern. Now, Mr. Carter. Royce's tone took on a harder edge. You wouldn't want to make this difficult, would you? Just being thorough in our duties. Protecting and serving, that's all. Henderson had drifted closer, his bulk casting a shadow over their table. Speaking of protecting, he added, someone reported a missing wallet earlier. Brown leather, about this big. He held his hands apart to demonstrate. You folks haven't happened to see anything like that, have you? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn's fingers found her napkin, twisting the paper slowly between her hands. She thought of Marcus, of his straight spine and steady gaze, of how he'd tell them to stay calm, to document everything. Her phone sat heavy in her purse beside her. No, Samuel answered, each word precise and measured. We haven't seen any wallet. And I don't appreciate what you're implying, Officer Henderson. Royce leaned forward, placing both hands on their table. The movement knocked the vase of flowers slightly off-center. Nobody's implying anything, Mr. Carter. Just asking questions. That's our job, after all. Unless you have some problem with law enforcement doing their job. The vinyl seat creaked as Samuel shifted position, his shoulders squaring even as his jaw clenched tight enough that Evelyn could see the muscle working in his cheek. The napkin in her hands was completely shredded now, tiny white pieces scattered across her lap like snow. Through the window, the morning sun continued to shine, oblivious to the tension building inside the diner. Cars passed by on Main Street, their drivers unaware of the scene unfolding behind the glass. The ceiling fans spun their lazy circles overhead, stirring the heavy air but providing no relief from the suffocating atmosphere. Evelyn's fingers found another napkin from the dispenser, gripping it until her knuckles showed white through her skin. She could feel her pulse in her throat as Royce straightened up, adjusting his belt again with that same deliberate slowness. The morning that had started with such promise now felt like a trap slowly closing around them. Theft? Royce's voice rose sharply, cutting through the diner's tense silence. You know, Mr. Carter, we've got multiple witnesses saying they saw someone matching your description near where that wallet went missing. His words carried to every corner of the restaurant, deliberately loud enough for all to hear. Several diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A teenage girl in the corner booth lifted her phone, its camera lens catching the morning light. 2 more phones appeared from other tables, held low but steadily recording. "That's ridiculous!" Samuel's voice was firm but controlled. "We've been here having breakfast. Check with Linda. We arrived less than 30 minutes ago." Royce's lip curled. "Oh, we'll check all right. Empty your pockets, Mr. Carter. Nice and slow." Samuel's hands gripped the edge of the table. Evelyn saw the subtle tremor in his fingers, the way his wedding ring caught the light as his knuckles whitened. Decades of dignity warred with decades of learned caution in his expression. "I will not," Samuel said, each word precise and measured. "I've done nothing wrong, and you have no right." "No right?" Henderson cut in, taking a step closer. "Resisting a police officer now, are we?" The phones kept recording. Some customers stared intently at their plates, shoulders hunched. Others watched with undisguised interest, like spectators at a slow-motion car crash. The ceiling fans whirred overhead, stirring the suffocating air. Samuel pushed his chair back and stood, his full height impressive even at 79. "I'm not resisting anything. I'm stating my rights as a citizen. You have no probable cause." "Sit down!" Royce barked, his hand moving to his belt. "That's an order. Don't you dare touch him." Evelyn found her voice, rising shakily to her feet beside her husband. The shredded napkin pieces scattered from her lap like confetti. Everything happened at once. Henderson moved forward, bumping the table hard. Coffee cups rattled. The vase of daisies toppled, water spreading across the formica surface. Evelyn stumbled backward, her hip catching the edge of a neighboring table. She lost her balance, arms windmilling as she tried to catch herself. The sound of her fall seemed to echo through the diner. Her head didn't hit the floor. Samuel had lunged to catch her, but her knee struck the tile hard enough to make her gasp. Linda's shoes appeared in Evelyn's vision, the owner having rushed from behind the counter. "That's enough!" Linda's voice cracked like a whip. "Deputy Royce, Officer Henderson, you need to step back right now." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the phones lowered slightly, their owners seemingly unsure whether to keep recording. Samuel's arms were still around Evelyn, protective and trembling with suppressed emotion. Linda helped Evelyn to her feet, her touch gentle, but her voice steel-edged. "These people are my customers. They're celebrating their anniversary. I won't have them harassed in my establishment." "Now, Linda," Royce started, but she cut him off. "No. You want to talk about witnesses? I'm a witness. The Carters have been here the whole time, as you well know, and I've got security cameras that'll prove it." She gestured to the black dome in the ceiling corner. "So, unless you've got an actual warrant or probable cause, I suggest you leave. Now." Henderson's face darkened, but Royce touched his partner's arm. His expression was unreadable behind his mirrored sunglasses, which he'd replaced sometime during the confrontation. "We'll be back," he said softly, just loud enough for the Carters to hear. Linda stood her ground, arms crossed, as the officers made their way to the door. The bell jingled as they left, the sound absurdly cheerful in the heavy atmosphere. Through the window, Evelyn watched them climb into their patrol car. But they didn't drive away immediately. "Here, honey, sit down." Linda guided Evelyn back to the booth, now wiped clean of spilled coffee. "Let me get you some fresh coffee and ice for that knee." Evelyn's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked at the scattered flower petals, the wet napkins, the evidence of chaos on their anniversary table. Samuel stood beside her, his face a mask of guilt and concern. "Evelyn," he said softly, extending his hand, "I'm so sorry. I never meant for today to—" She took his hand, letting him help her slide into the booth, but couldn't find words to respond. The morning sun still streamed through the windows, but its warmth seemed to have vanished. Around them, the diner's usual chatter slowly resumed, though muted and careful. Phones disappeared into pockets and purses, their footage saved for later sharing. Linda returned with fresh coffee and a makeshift ice pack wrapped in a clean towel. "Put this on your knee, Evelyn. And don't you two worry about the bill today. This breakfast is on the house." Evelyn pressed the ice pack to her throbbing knee, watching as Linda tried to restore normalcy to the diner, moving from table to table with fresh coffee and quiet words. Samuel sat beside her now instead of across, his presence solid and familiar. But the weight of unspoken words hung between them like a heavy curtain. Linda set down a slice of warm apple pie between the Carters, the scent of cinnamon rising with the steam. 2 forks gleamed against the white napkins, a peace offering in silverware. "Your favorite, Evelyn," Linda said softly, her hand resting briefly on Evelyn's shoulder. "I'm so sorry about what happened. This isn't right, and it isn't what your anniversary should be." The ice pack had numbed Evelyn's knee, but a deeper chill remained in her chest. She watched the other diners pretending everything was normal. Forks scraping plates, coffee cups clinking, conversation a careful murmur. But their glances kept sliding toward the Carters' booth, then quickly away. Samuel picked up one of the forks, trying to inject lightness into his voice. "Well, at least we get dessert before lunch. Remember our first date? We had pie for dinner because that's all I could afford." The memory usually made Evelyn smile, but today she just stared at the steam curling up from the pie. "That was different," she said quietly. "We were young then. We knew the risks, but we took them anyway." "The risks haven't changed," Samuel replied, his attempt at cheerfulness fading. "Neither has the need to face them. Look what facing them got us today." Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. She smoothed her napkin with trembling fingers. "Your pride could have gotten you arrested. Or worse." Samuel set the fork down with a soft clink. "My pride? Is that what you call refusing to be treated like a criminal in public? I call it putting yourself in danger when you could have just—" "Just what?" Samuel's whisper was fierce. "Just let them humiliate us? Empty my pockets like a common thief? Bow and scrape and say, 'Yes, sir,' 'No, sir,' while they make up lies?" Linda appeared again, coffee pot in hand, her presence temporarily halting their argument. As she topped off their cups, her eyes darted to the window. "They're still out there," she murmured, "making calls. I don't like it." Through the glass, they could see Royce in his patrol car, phone to his ear, gesturing sharply as he spoke. Henderson stood by the driver's side door, his stance rigid with barely contained anger. Evelyn's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "See? They're not done. They're just getting started." She turned to her husband, voice pleading. "Samuel, please. We can file a complaint later. We can talk to the sheriff tomorrow. But right now, we need to leave before this gets worse." "Running away won't solve anything," Samuel said. "It never has. That's what they want. For us to be scared. To stay in our place. I'm not talking about running away. I'm talking about being smart. Being alive." Evelyn's voice cracked. "What good is standing up to them if it means I have to visit you in the hospital? Or worse?" Linda moved between tables, ostensibly wiping surfaces, but keeping close to their booth. Other customers were starting to leave, dropping cash on tables and hurrying out, avoiding eye contact with the police car. 47 years we've been married," Samuel said, his voice low and intense. 54 years in this town. I delivered mail to half these people's houses, their children, their grandchildren. And still, all it takes is one accusation, one corrupt deputy, and suddenly I'm a criminal. Of course it's not right, Evelyn said. But getting yourself hurt won't make it better. Remember what happened to James back in '65? All he did was stand up for himself, and they— The diner's door crashed open, bell jangling violently. Royce strode in, face flushed with anger, Henderson right behind him. The remaining customers froze, forks halfway to mouths, coffee cups suspended. "Samuel Carter," Royce announced, voice carrying to every corner. "You're under arrest for assaulting an officer and resisting arrest." "What?" Linda stepped forward. "That's ridiculous. He never—" "Stay out of this, Linda," Henderson warned. "This is official police business now." Royce reached the booth in 3 long strides. His hand clamped down on Samuel's arm, yanking him roughly to his feet. "On your feet, old man. You want to act tough? Let's see how tough you are down at the station." "Get your hands off him!" Evelyn tried to stand, but her injured knee buckled. Linda caught her before she could fall. Samuel didn't resist, but he didn't help either, his body rigid with dignity as Royce pulled him toward the door. The remaining diners watched in horrified silence, phones appearing again to record the scene. The bell above the door chimed once more. A shadow filled the doorway, broad-shouldered, tall, radiating controlled power. Marcus Carter stood perfectly still, taking in the scene before him with sharp, calculating eyes. His jaw clenched as he saw Royce's hand on his father's arm, his mother's distress, the scattered remnants of their anniversary celebration. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even Royce's grip on Samuel faltered for a moment as he registered the newcomer's presence. Marcus's eyes, hard as steel, locked onto Royce's face. The morning sun at his back cast his expression in shadow, but there was no mistaking the deadly calm in his voice. Marcus filled the doorway like a statue carved from granite, his military bearing evident in his squared shoulders and perfect stillness. Morning sunlight caught the edges of his short-cropped hair, creating a halo effect that made him seem even more imposing. His eyes, sharp and analytical, swept the diner in a practiced scan, taking in the scattered phones recording the scene, the frightened customers, Linda's protective stance near his mother, and finally settling on Royce's grip on his father's arm. "Marcus!" Evelyn's voice cracked with equal parts relief and fear. "Baby, be careful." Samuel twisted in Royce's grasp, trying to wrench free. "Son, don't!" "Shut up!" Royce snapped, tightening his grip until Samuel winced. "This is a police matter. Who the hell are you?" Marcus took 3 measured steps into the diner, his movements fluid and controlled. His combat boots made no sound on the linoleum floor. "I'm their son, and you're hurting my father." The casual confidence in his voice made Royce's face flush darker. "Back off, boy. Your daddy's under arrest for assaulting an officer." "That's a lie," Linda called out. "Everyone here saw what really happened." Marcus's gaze never left Royce, but his voice carried to the whole diner. "Keep recording, everyone. Get every second of this." Henderson's hand drifted to his taser. "Last warning. Back away or—" In the space of a heartbeat, Marcus closed the distance. His hands moved with practiced precision, one to Royce's wrist, applying precise pressure to nerve points, the other to the deputy's elbow. A simple twist, using Royce's own momentum and poor balance against him. There was no violence, no dramatic struggle, just the fluid grace of perfect technique. Royce's grip on Samuel broke. The deputy stumbled, spun by the redirected force, and found himself pressed against the counter, arm twisted behind him at an awkward but non-damaging angle. The whole movement had taken less than 2 seconds. "Don't," Marcus said quietly, as Henderson fumbled with his taser. "You really don't want to escalate this." Samuel steadied himself, rubbing his arm where Royce's fingers had dug in. Evelyn reached for him, and he moved to her side, sheltered by their son's broad frame. Henderson's taser wavered, uncertainty clear on his face. The weapon looked almost toy-like against Marcus's solid presence. This is interference with police business." "No," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of command. This is me protecting my parents from harassment and false arrest." He released Royce with a small push, positioning himself between the officers and his family. Every person in this diner saw what really happened. Every phone caught the truth. The silence in the diner was absolute. Coffee stopped dripping in the machines. The ceiling fan's gentle whoosh seemed thunderous. Even the traffic outside had gone quiet, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Royce straightened his uniform, trying to salvage his dignity. His face had gone from red to pale, anger warring with the sudden realization that he'd lost control of the situation. "You just assaulted a police officer." "No." Marcus cut him off, voice level but carrying an edge of steel. "I used minimum necessary force to prevent the unlawful detention of an innocent citizen. Would you like me to demonstrate the difference?" His stance shifted slightly. Nothing aggressive, but the movement carried the unmistakable grace of a trained fighter. "I can cite the relevant laws regarding civilian intervention in cases of police misconduct, if you'd prefer. Or we could discuss the department's policy on racial profiling and false arrests." Linda had moved to stand near the register, phone clearly visible as she recorded. Other customers had formed a loose circle, their own phones raised like shields. The morning sun through the windows cast long shadows across the floor, dramatic lines that seemed to emphasize the tension in the air. Henderson's taser lowered slightly, his confidence visibly cracking. "Royce, maybe we should—" "Shut up," Royce hissed, but his usual swagger had vanished. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by Marcus's calm competence. Marcus took one step forward, his voice dropping to a quiet command that nonetheless carried to every corner of the diner. "Step away from my parents. Now!" The words hung in the air like thunder before lightning. Every phone captured the moment. Marcus, standing tall and certain, his parents behind him, the two officers facing a choice between pride and wisdom. The morning sun painted everything in stark contrasts of light and shadow, truth and deception, right and wrong. Royce's hand trembled as he reached for his radio, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Royce. We need immediate backup at Linda's Diner on Main. Multiple hostile subjects, one with military training." Marcus knelt beside his mother, his movements precise and controlled. "Let me see your knee, Mama." He gently rolled up her pant leg, revealing a nasty scrape from her earlier fall. From his pocket, he produced a compact first aid kit, the kind soldiers carry. "Always prepared, aren't you, baby?" Evelyn managed a weak smile. Force of habit. Marcus's hands moved with practiced efficiency, cleaning the wound with an antiseptic wipe. "This might sting a bit." Henderson paced nervously, his taser now holstered but his hand hovering near it. "You can't just—" "Everyone with a phone!" Marcus called out, cutting him off while applying antibiotic cream to his mother's knee. "Make sure you're getting clear video. If your battery's low, there are outlets along the walls. This is all going to matter later." The diner patrons responded immediately. Those already filming adjusted their positions for better angles. Others pulled out phones they'd been too scared to use before. The quiet clicks and beeps of recording devices filled the tense air. "You're all interfering with police business," Royce snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. Linda stepped forward, her own phone steady in her hand. "The only business I see is harassment of paying customers on their anniversary." Marcus finished bandaging Evelyn's knee with precise, practiced movements. "How's that feel, Mama?" "Better," she whispered, though her hands still shook. Samuel stood protectively near them both. "Son, more police are coming. Maybe we should—" "We're not going anywhere," Marcus said firmly, rising to his full height. "We haven't done anything wrong." He turned to address the diner at large. "Make sure you get good shots of any officers who come in, badge numbers especially." The sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights began flashing through the windows, painting the diner's interior in alternating colors. 3 more patrol cars pulled up outside. "Last chance," Royce said, straightening his uniform. "On your knees, hands behind your head." Marcus's reply was cut off as 4 more officers burst through the door, hands on their weapons. "Down! Everyone down!" the lead officer shouted. "Sir," Marcus responded, his voice carrying the calm authority of a Marine, "I'm going to need you to lower your voice. You're frightening these civilians, and there are children present." He gestured to a booth where a mother was shielding her young son. 2 officers moved to flank him. Marcus tracked their movement without turning his head, his stance subtly shifting to maintain awareness of all threats. "He assaulted Deputy Royce," Henderson called out. The first officer lunged for Marcus, reaching for his arm. What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Marcus stepped into the grab, using the officer's momentum to redirect him. The man went flying over Marcus's hip, landing hard on his back. Before anyone could react, Marcus had already reset his stance, hands open and visible. "That was a standard defensive throw," Marcus announced clearly for the recording phones. "No strikes, no excessive force. I will continue to defend myself and my parents from unlawful assault." Another officer rushed him from behind. Marcus dropped his shoulder, caught the man's arm, and executed a perfect arm drag. The officer stumbled past him, off balance but unhurt. A third tried to tackle him low. Marcus sprawled like a wrestler, spreading his weight to stay upright while keeping himself between the officers and his parents. "Stop!" Linda's voice cut through the chaos. "This is ridiculous! They were just having breakfast." The remaining officers hesitated, clearly unprepared for someone who could neutralize their attacks without causing injury. Phones recorded everything from multiple angles, capturing every move, every reaction. Marcus used the pause to address the officers calmly. "I'm a Marine Corps veteran, trained in non-lethal combat techniques. I've defended myself using minimum necessary force against unlawful assault. Every person here has witnessed Deputy Royce's harassment of my parents and his attempt at false arrest." The officers looked uncertainly at each other. The ones Marcus had thrown were getting up slowly, more embarrassed than hurt. Linda moved carefully through the tension, making her way to Evelyn's side. She leaned close, whispering, "I called Jasmine, Officer Lee. She's new, but she's good people. She'll help make this right." Evelyn squeezed Linda's hand, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, friend." Samuel stood straighter, his dignity returning as he watched his son maintain control of the situation. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, highlighting the absurdity of 6 police officers facing off against one man protecting his elderly parents in a small-town diner. Marcus remained centered, balanced, ready. His voice carried clearly to all the recording phones. "Now, who wants to be the first to explain why multiple officers are attempting to assault a veteran and his parents during a peaceful breakfast?" The diner's commotion had settled into an uneasy standoff. While Marcus kept the officers at bay near the counter, Linda had quietly guided Evelyn and Samuel to a secluded booth around the corner, partially hidden by an old jukebox. The morning sun cast long shadows through the Venetian blinds, striping their faces as they sat in tense silence. "You always do this," Evelyn finally whispered, her hands wrapped tight around her coffee cup. "Every single time, Samuel. You have to stand up, have to fight back." Samuel's jaw tightened. "And what would you have me do? Bow my head? Say, 'Yes, sir,' 'No, sir,' like we're still living in 1960? I would have you keep us safe." Evelyn's voice cracked. "All these years, every time you push back, I hold my breath waiting for the worst to happen." "The worst?" Samuel leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "The worst already happened, Evelyn. when they turned our own people against us. When they made our friends believe I was an informant, a traitor to the movement. Evelyn's eyes glistened. And maybe if you hadn't been so confrontational back then. Don't. Samuel's hand came down hard on the table, making the silverware rattle. Don't you dare suggest I brought that on myself. I'm not suggesting anything, Evelyn said, but her eyes dropped to the table. Sometimes I wonder if there wasn't some truth. Mama? Marcus's voice cut through their argument. He had approached so quietly neither had noticed, his military training evident in his silent movement. What are you saying? Evelyn startled, guilt flooding her face. Marcus, I didn't mean… You've doubted Dad all this time? Marcus slid into the booth beside his father, his expression a mix of shock and disappointment. After everything he's done for this family? Samuel sat very still, the hurt evident in his rigid posture. Your mother's entitled to her doubts. Lord knows half the town's had them for 40 years. Tell me what happened, Marcus demanded quietly. The real story. All of it. Evelyn dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. It was during the lunch counter protests. Your father was one of the organizers. The police were getting violent. And suddenly, they seemed to know every move we were planning. Because someone was feeding them information, Samuel added bitterly. And Sheriff Wilson's daddy made sure everyone thought it was me. But why would anyone believe that? Marcus asked. Because I worked at the post office, Samuel explained. Had access to people's mail, their communications, and because I'd argued with Reverend Jackson about keeping the protests peaceful, when some folks wanted to take more direct action. And you never cleared your name? How could I? Samuel's voice was heavy with decades of frustration. Wilson's daddy made sure the evidence pointed to me. Lost my position in the movement. Lost friends I'd had since childhood. Even lost my job eventually. Evelyn reached across the table trying to take Samuel's hand, but he pulled away. I wanted to believe you, she whispered. But you never fought the accusations. Just got quiet and proud and distant. Because my own wife didn't stand with me. The words burst from Samuel like they'd been waiting 40 years to be said. You think I didn't see the doubt in your eyes? The way you'd flinch when people whispered about me? The way you'd make excuses not to attend community meetings? I was scared. Evelyn's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. Scared of the violence. Scared of losing you to prison or worse. And yes, scared that maybe there was something you weren't telling me. Marcus sat in stunned silence, watching his parents' pain spill out after decades of careful containment. The weight of their shared history pressed down on the small booth like a physical presence. I'm tired, Samuel said finally, his voice rough. Tired of retreating. Tired of letting people believe lies about me. Tired of my own wife carrying that seed of doubt all these years. Samuel? Evelyn's voice was pleading now. No. He straightened his shoulders. That's why I won't back down anymore. Not to these officers, not to anyone. I've spent 40 years being careful, being quiet, trying to prove my dignity through silence. And what has it gotten me? Before anyone could respond, heavy footsteps approached their booth. A uniformed officer appeared, face flushed with excitement. Well, well, the officer announced loudly enough for the whole diner to hear. Looks like we just found something interesting in your car, Mr. Carter. Care to explain the drugs in your trunk? The accusation hung in the air like smoke, bitter and choking. Samuel's hands clenched into fists on the table, while Evelyn's face went pale with fear. Marcus remained perfectly still, only his eyes moving as he assessed this new threat. The diner had gone completely silent. All eyes turned toward their booth. The morning sun continued to stripe their faces through the blinds, highlighting the stark fear on Evelyn's face, the burning anger in Samuel's eyes, and the dangerous stillness in Marcus's posture. Deputy Royce swaggered into view, holding up a clear plastic evidence bag containing what looked like white powder. His smirk grew wider as he dangled it in front of the Carters. "Amazing what you find when you know where to look," Royce said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Who would have thought such upstanding citizens would be carrying narcotics?" Samuel's face darkened with fury. "You planted that. We both know it." "Now! Now!" Royce tisked, gesturing to two officers. "Let's not add resisting arrest to the charges. Cuff them." Marcus's hand slipped casually into his jacket pocket, pressing a button on his phone. The recording app activated silently as he kept his eyes locked on Royce. The diner's other customers watched in horror as the officers roughly pulled Samuel and Evelyn from their seats. The metal handcuffs clicked shut around their wrists, too tight, making Evelyn wince in pain. "Please," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "We've never had drugs. Never." The bell above the door chimed as the police captain strode in, his presence filling the small diner. He was a big man with cold eyes and an artificial smile that never reached them. "Well done, deputy," the captain said, examining the evidence bag. "Looks like at least 50 grams. That's trafficking charges, not just possession." Marcus kept his phone subtly angled toward the scene, capturing every word as the captain continued. "Mr. Carter, your reputation for causing trouble finally caught up with you. First betraying your own people back in the day, now this?" Samuel struggled against his cuffs. "You're no better than Wilson's father was. Same corrupt blood running through this department." Evelyn sobbed quietly, her shoulders shaking. "Samuel, please, just stop. You're making it worse." Her voice cracked with despair. "Maybe if you'd just stayed quiet all those years ago. Maybe if you'd just let things be." The hurt in Samuel's eyes cut deep as he looked at his wife. "Even now? Even when they're framing us right in front of you, you still think surrender is the answer?" "Touching family drama," Royce interrupted, reaching for Marcus. "But Junior here needs cuffs, too." Marcus allowed himself to be handcuffed, keeping his movements subtle as he shifted his phone to continue recording. His eyes scanned the diner. Exit routes, obstacles, potential distractions. His Marine training kicked in automatically, mapping escape scenarios. The captain moved closer, towering over Marcus. "You're not so tough now, are you, soldier boy? Should have stayed overseas where you belonged." "Sir," one of the younger officers called from the door. "Media's starting to show up outside." The captain's face tightened. "Get them out the back. Now." As the officers started shoving them toward the kitchen, Marcus caught sight of the ancient fire alarm on the wall. The wiring looked original to the building, probably from the 1960s. His mind raced through the electrical training from his combat engineering courses. They passed close to the wall. Marcus stumbled slightly, his shoulder brushing the alarm's housing. In one fluid motion, his fingers found the exposed wire he'd spotted and twisted it just enough. The effect was instant. The alarm shrieked to life, its ancient bell clanging with deafening force. The sprinkler system sputtered and sprayed, sending customers scrambling. Steam rose from the grill as water hit hot metal. In the chaos, Marcus moved with practiced precision. His hands, already loose in the poorly applied cuffs, slipped free. He spun toward his parents, fingers finding the pressure points on their cuffs' locking mechanisms. "When I say run," he whispered in their ears, "head for the kitchen door. Don't stop." The captain was shouting orders, trying to control the panic. Royce had his back turned, shielding the evidence bag from the water. The other officers were distracted by the fleeing customers. Marcus's muscles tensed, ready to move. The steam from the grill grew thicker, mixing with the spray from the sprinklers. Water dripped down their faces as they waited for his signal. The diner had become a scene of perfect chaos, exactly what Marcus needed. People pushed past the officers, complaints and shouts mixing with the alarm's wail. The captain's authority was drowning in the confusion. Through it all, Marcus's phone kept recording in his pocket, capturing every moment of the false arrest and the officers' rising panic as their carefully planned setup dissolved into mayhem. Evelyn's tears mingled with the sprinkler water on her face. But now there was something else in her expression, a glimmer of the fire that had drawn her to Samuel all those years ago. She squeezed her husband's hand, a silent apology for doubting, a promise to stand with him now. Samuel stood straight, despite his years, dignity unbroken by the false charges or the water soaking his anniversary suit. His eyes met Marcus's, ready to trust his son's lead. The alarm continued its piercing cry as steam and chaos filled the air. Marcus tensed, waiting for the perfect moment to make their move, his military instincts tracking every officer's position through the confusion. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs as he guided his parents through the steamy kitchen. Pots clattered to the floor behind them, creating more obstacles for their pursuers. His combat-trained eyes picked out the exit sign's dim red glow through the chaos. "Stay close," he whispered, gripping his mother's elbow while his father held her other arm. "Quick and quiet, just like I showed you." They burst into the alley, the heavy door clicking shut behind them. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings. Marcus pressed his parents against the brick wall, listening intently. Shouts echoed from inside the diner, but the back door remained closed. "This way," Marcus directed, leading them behind a dumpster as a police cruiser's siren wailed past the alley's entrance. His mother's breathing came in sharp gasps. "I can't." Evelyn stumbled, her legs shaking. Samuel caught her. "I've got you, love. Just a little further." Marcus scanned their surroundings, mapping an escape route through the maze of downtown alleys. His training kicked in automatically. Identify cover, note sight lines, track potential threats. He'd done this in combat zones, but never with his elderly parents in tow. They crept between buildings, Marcus choosing paths that kept them hidden from the main streets. Every few steps, he'd halt them in doorways or behind parked cars, watching for patrol vehicles. His father's face was set with determination, but his mother's eyes darted fearfully at every sound. "Down!" Marcus hissed suddenly, pulling them behind a stack of wooden pallets. A police car crawled past the alley's far end, its spotlight sweeping the shadows. Evelyn buried her face in Samuel's chest, muffling a sob. When the coast cleared, they pressed on. Marcus led them through a narrow passage between two restaurants, the smell of cooking grease heavy in the air. His boots made no sound on the pavement, a skill learned in far deadlier situations. His parents tried to move quietly, but their dress shoes clicked softly against the ground. "Stop right there," a woman's voice commanded from behind them. Marcus spun, automatically placing himself between the voice and his parents. Officer Jasmine Lee stood at the alley's entrance, her hand raised to show she wasn't reaching for her weapon. "I'm here to help," she said softly. "Linda sent me. There's a safe place nearby." Marcus didn't relax his protective stance. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I've been gathering evidence against Royce and the captain for months," Jasmine replied. "And because I know what really happened to your father in '65. Samuel stiffened. "What do you mean?" "Not here." Jasmine glanced over her shoulder. "Linda's house is 2 blocks away. I can get you there unseen." Marcus studied her face, years of combat experience helping him read people's intentions. He saw no deception in her eyes, only controlled urgency and genuine concern. "Marcus," Evelyn whispered, "I remember her. She helped old Mrs. Johnson when those boys were harassing her store." After a moment's consideration, Marcus nodded. "Lead the way, officer, but no sudden moves." Jasmine guided them through a series of service alleys and behind small businesses. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew every corner of her patrol route. When they heard approaching sirens, she quickly directed them into an abandoned storage room. Finally, they reached Linda's modest two-story home through her back garden. The diner owner ushered them inside, quickly closing the curtains. "Upstairs bedroom's ready," Linda said. "No one will look for you here." Once they were safely inside the room, Jasmine pulled out her phone. "You need to see this." She showed them videos and documents, evidence of systematic harassment, planted evidence, falsified reports. They've been doing this for years, but they're usually more careful. Today they got sloppy because they were angry. Samuel sat heavily on the bed, his shoulders slumping. Just like his father did to me. Same playbook, different decade. Evelyn perched beside him, taking his hand. "Samuel, I'm so sorry. All these years, I was so afraid of you making waves, of drawing attention. I let that fear make me doubt you. And I was too proud," Samuel replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Too determined to fight every battle, even when it hurt you, even when it made you feel unsafe." Tears rolled down Evelyn's cheeks. "When they accused you of being an informant back then, I should have stood by you completely. Instead, I let my fear give room for doubt. Can you forgive me?" Samuel gathered her close, his own eyes wet. "There's nothing to forgive, my love. Fear is what they want. It's how they keep us quiet, keep us divided. Even divided me from my own wife's trust." Marcus watched his parents' reconciliation, his throat tight. Jasmine touched his arm gently. "I can't take them down alone," she said quietly. "I need someone with your skills, someone who knows how to plan an operation. Will you help me expose them?" Marcus's jaw set with determination as he watched his parents holding each other, decades of pain and fear finally breaking open between them. "Tell me what you need." Linda's attic smelled of old paper and dust. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, each filled with decades of memories and records. Marcus helped his mother settle into an old armchair, while Jasmine spread files across a worn table. "My husband Tom kept everything," Linda explained, pulling out more folders. "He believed documentation was the best weapon against corruption. Said truth has a way of surfacing, even years later." The afternoon sun filtered through a small window, casting long shadows across yellowed newspaper clippings and faded police reports. Samuel stood behind Evelyn's chair, his hand resting on her shoulder as they watched Jasmine sort through the papers. "Here," Jasmine said, carefully opening a brittle folder. "Police logs from 1965, the week of the protests." She laid out handwritten pages, the ink faded, but still legible. Marcus leaned in, scanning the entries with practiced efficiency. "Look at these discrepancies. The times don't match up." He pointed to several entries. These officers reported being at the protest site, but other logs show them across town. "That's right," Linda nodded, pulling out a small notebook. Tom noticed it too. He kept his own records of where officers actually were that day. "See here?" She indicated several names. These men were seen at the sheriff's house the night before, not on patrol like they claimed. Samuel's fingers tightened on Evelyn's shoulder. "The sheriff's son, who's now the captain, he was there too. I remember seeing him talking to those officers before everything went wrong." Evelyn reached up to cover Samuel's hand with her own. "Tell them, Samuel. Tell them what really happened that day." Samuel's voice was rough with memory. "We were planning a peaceful march to the courthouse. Nothing illegal, just exercising our rights. But someone told the sheriff we were planning violence." He paused, swallowing hard. "They said I was the one who told them." "But you weren't," Jasmine said, holding up a yellowed memo. "According to this, the sheriff's office already had their response planned days before any supposed tip came in." They were going to plant an informant story, no matter what. Marcus pulled out his phone, photographing each document. They needed someone respected in the community to take the fall, to create division. And it worked, Evelyn said softly. People who'd known Samuel their whole lives started looking at him differently, started wondering. Linda opened another box, this one full of photographs. Tom took these during the protests. He was trying to document everything, but they confiscated most of his film. She spread several black and white images across the table. The photos showed crowds of protesters, police lines, and, crucially, the sheriff's son talking to officers in an alley, pointing to Samuel in the distance. "They set you up," Marcus growled, his military training evident in his controlled anger. "They manufactured the whole thing." Jasmine nodded, adding newer documents to the pile. "And they've been using the same tactics ever since. Plant evidence, create suspicion, divide the community." The current captain learned from his father. Evelyn stood slowly, her hands trembling as she touched one of the photographs. "All these years, I was so afraid." She turned to Samuel, tears in her eyes. "I let that fear make me doubt you sometimes. Made me wish you'd just stay quiet, keep your head down." Samuel cupped her face gently. "And I was so angry about being falsely accused. I didn't see how my need to fight back was frightening you. I just kept pushing, trying to prove myself." "You had nothing to prove," Evelyn whispered. "I should have trusted you completely. Should have stood with you openly instead of letting fear make me hesitate." "We both let them win a little," Samuel said, pulling her close. "Let them put distance between us with doubt and fear. But no more." Linda wiped her eyes, smiling at the couple's reconciliation. Tom would be so happy to see his records finally bringing out the truth. Jasmine gathered the most damning documents, organizing them carefully. "This is enough to start an investigation, but we need to catch them in the act, show everyone exactly how they operate." Marcus's tactical mind was already working. The diner would be perfect. It's public. Lots of witnesses with phones, security cameras. He turned to Linda. "Would you be willing to help us set a trap?" Linda's eyes sparkled with determination. "Tom and I bought that diner to create a place where everyone would be welcome, where right is right and wrong is wrong. You bet I'll help." "It's risky," Jasmine warned. "The captain won't go down without a fight." "We're done hiding," Samuel declared, his arm around Evelyn. "Done letting them make us doubt each other and ourselves." Evelyn straightened her shoulders, years of fear falling away, as she looked at her husband with clear, trusting eyes. "Together this time. No more fear between us." Marcus and Jasmine exchanged determined looks. "Then let's plan this carefully," Marcus said. "We'll need perfect timing, multiple angles of evidence, and a way to protect everyone involved." They gathered around the table, Linda's late husband's records spread before them like a map to long-buried truths, ready to write a new chapter of justice in their town's history. The first hint of dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and purples as Linda's key turned in the diner's front door. The familiar bell chimed softly as she pushed it open, her hand steady despite the tension in her shoulders. Marcus entered first, scanning the dim interior with military precision before nodding to the others. Evelyn and Samuel followed, their fingers intertwined, walking taller than they had in days. Jasmine brought up the rear, carrying a black equipment bag that contained everything they'd need to expose decades of corruption. "Main lights stay off for now," Marcus instructed, moving through the space with quiet efficiency. "We don't want to draw attention too early." He pulled the blinds halfway, letting in just enough morning light to work by. Linda moved behind the counter, starting a pot of coffee. The familiar routine helped steady her nerves. "I called everyone last night. They'll be here by 6. Jasmine laid her bag on the counter and began unpacking small recording devices and wireless microphones. We need to wire the key areas first. She held up a tiny black dot. These are virtually invisible once placed. Samuel watched her work, his expression determined. Who exactly is coming? Reverend Thompson, Linda replied, measuring coffee grounds. Dr. Williams from the medical center. Judge Martinez. A few others who've been in this town long enough to remember what happened in '65. She paused, looking at Samuel. People who should have spoken up back then. Evelyn squeezed Samuel's hand. People who need to hear the truth. Marcus was positioning chairs and tables, creating clear sight lines to all exits. His movements were precise, tactical. Once everyone's in position, I want the elders seated here. He indicated a central area. Protected, but with a clear view of everything. The coffee maker gurgled to life, its aroma filling the space as Linda brought out fresh pastries. They'll need their strength. This won't be easy for anyone. Jasmine tested each microphone, her police training evident in her methodical approach. She handed one to Linda. This one goes under your collar. Remember, we need them to incriminate themselves clearly. The morning light grew stronger as they worked. Marcus helped Jasmine place cameras in strategic locations while teaching the elders how to activate them remotely using their phones. Samuel and Evelyn arranged documents on various tables, old records mixed with new evidence, telling a 40-year story of corruption and lies. By 5:45, the first guests arrived. Reverend Thompson entered first, his aged face solemn as he embraced Samuel and Evelyn. Dr. Williams followed, carrying his medical bag. Just in case, he said quietly. Judge Martinez arrived with her clerk, both carrying legal notepads. Before we start, Marcus addressed the small gathering, his voice low but commanding. Everyone needs to understand the risks. These men are armed and dangerous. If violence erupts, move to the kitchen. Linda's shown me the back exit. Your safety is paramount. Jasmine stepped forward, adjusting her concealed wire. We have backup on standby, but they won't move in unless I give the signal. We need to let this play out naturally. The elders nodded, their faces showing a mix of determination and old guilt. Judge Martinez spoke up. It's time we made this right. All of us failed you, Samuel. We let fear and doubt poison our community. Linda served coffee as Marcus continued his security briefing. Keep your phones recording, but don't make it obvious. If they draw weapons, hit the floor. I can handle them. But I need everyone clear of the line of fire. The morning sun now filled the diner, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum. Samuel stood at the counter, his hand resting on a stack of evidence. All these years, he said softly, I kept hoping the truth would come out on its own. Sometimes truth needs a little help, Evelyn replied, straightening his collar with steady hands. Their eyes met, decades of pain and love passing between them. At 6:15, they heard police sirens in the distance. Marcus moved to his position near the front door, his stance relaxed, but ready. Jasmine checked her wire one final time and nodded to Linda, who took her place behind the counter. The sirens grew louder, then cut off abruptly. Heavy footsteps approached the diner. Through the half-drawn blinds, they could see Royce and Henderson, hands on their weapons. Behind them, the police captain walked with the confident stride of a man used to getting his way. The bell chimed harshly as they burst in, Royce's face twisted with anger. Henderson's hand rested on his holstered gun, while the captain surveyed the scene with cold calculation. "Where are they?" Royce demanded, his voice echoing in the tense space. "We know you're hiding the Carters. This little game ends now." The captain stepped forward, his badge catching the morning light. "Anyone harboring fugitives will face charges. This is your last chance to turn them over." The elders remained seated, their phones discreetly recording as the three corrupt officers filled the doorway, armed and angry, demanding justice while preparing to pervert it once again. The morning sun streamed through the diner windows as Jasmine stepped forward, her shoulders squared. The weight of her badge felt heavy against her chest, but her voice rang clear and steady. "Before you make any more threats," she said, holding up a small digital recorder, "you should hear something." She pressed play, and Deputy Royce's voice filled the diner, harsh and unfiltered. "Plant the drugs in their car. Make it look clean." The captain's face darkened. "Turn that off immediately." "No, sir, I won't." Jasmine's finger moved to increase the volume. Henderson's nervous laughter crackled through the speaker, followed by more damning conversations. "I have hours of this. Every threat, every scheme, every lie." Linda moved between the tables, distributing manila folders to the seated elders. "These are copies of all the evidence," she announced. "Police logs from 1965, doctored reports, witness statements that were buried." Samuel stood, his dignity radiating through the room. "You're going to hear the truth now. All of it." Reverend Thompson opened his folder, his hands trembling. "Dear Lord," he whispered, scanning the documents. "Samuel, they framed you. The sheriff's father. He planned it all." Judge Martinez lifted a yellowed police report. "This is my father's signature. He tried to report the corruption, but they buried his complaint." Her voice cracked. "They transferred him out of state a week later." Royce's face had turned red. "This is all lies!" He lunged forward, reaching for the papers, but Marcus smoothly intercepted him. "Don't," Marcus warned, his stance relaxed but ready. Jasmine played another recording, the captain's voice this time discussing how to maintain order in their town. The elders listened, their expressions shifting from shock to anger as decades of manipulation became clear. Henderson started edging toward the door, but Dr. Williams stood to block his path. "Running won't help you now, son. Face what you've done." The captain's hand moved toward his weapon. "Officer Lee, you're suspended effective immediately. This is an unauthorized—" "Actually, sir," Jasmine cut in, "this is an official investigation. State police are already on their way." She held up her phone, showing an active call. "They've been listening since we started." Royce suddenly charged forward, trying to grab Samuel. "You're still under arrest, old man." But Marcus was faster. In one fluid motion, he caught Royce's arm, twisted, and used the deputy's own momentum to slam him face first into the counter. The move was precise, controlled, pure Marine Corps training. "Stay down," Marcus ordered, securing Royce's arms behind his back. Henderson drew his taser, hands shaking. "Let him go. Now!" "Put it down, Henderson," Jasmine commanded, her own weapon still holstered. "Think about what you're doing." The elders had risen from their seats, forming a protective circle around the Carters. Judge Martinez spoke up, her voice carrying legal authority. "Every person here is a witness now, to both history and justice." Linda stepped out from behind the counter. "We all watched you harass them, plant evidence, abuse your power." Other townspeople who had gathered outside now pushed through the door, phones recording everything. Henderson's taser wavered, then lowered. The fight seemed to drain from him as he looked around at the faces. Faces of people he'd grown up with, people who now knew the truth. But the captain wasn't finished. In one swift motion, he drew his service weapon and grabbed Jasmine, pressing the barrel against her ribs. "Drop the evidence. All of it." His eyes locked onto Marcus. "On your knees, Marine. Or I start with her and move on to your parents." The room froze. Marcus's muscles tensed, calculating angles, risks, possibilities. Royce lay secured on the floor. Henderson stood paralyzed, and the morning sun cast long shadows across the diner's worn linoleum. "Last chance," the captain growled, tightening his grip on Jasmine. "Surrender now, or watch them die." The elders drew closer to Samuel and Evelyn, their bodies forming a human shield. Dr. Williams moved his medical bag within reach, his expression grim. Judge Martinez clutched the evidence files to her chest, refusing to let go of truth so recently uncovered. Time seemed to stop in the diner as the captain's finger tightened on the trigger, his desperation making him more dangerous with each passing second. The only sound was the soft hum of the coffee maker and the rapid breathing of those trapped in this deadly standoff. Marcus kept his hands visible, his combat-trained mind racing through scenarios. One wrong move could cost lives. The captain's eyes darted between his targets: Jasmine, the Carters, the evidence that could destroy his corrupt empire. The morning sun caught his badge, once a symbol of protection, now revealed as a shield for decades of injustice. Marcus's eyes met Jasmine's for a fraction of a second. His right hand, hanging loose at his side, made a subtle gesture, thumb and index finger forming a quick circle, then 3 fingers extending. A Marine Corps signal. Create diversion. Attack in 3. Jasmine didn't hesitate. She suddenly went limp in the captain's grip, her knees buckling. The unexpected dead weight threw him off balance, forcing him to adjust his stance. "Please," she gasped dramatically, "I can't breathe." The captain's attention split between his stumbling hostage and Marcus. That split second was all they needed. Marcus exploded into action. 2 long strides brought him within range. His left hand shot up, deflecting the captain's gun arm while his right hand clamped down on the weapon itself. He twisted sharply, using the same disarming technique that had served him in combat. The gun clattered to the floor as the captain howled in pain. Jasmine spun free, dropping and rolling away. In the same fluid motion, Marcus stepped into the captain's space, using his attacker's momentum against him. A swift leg sweep combined with an arm lock sent the corrupt officer crashing face first onto the diner floor. Marcus's knee pressed firmly into his back, securing him with practiced efficiency. "Someone grab his cuffs," Marcus called out calmly, maintaining the hold. Henderson made one last desperate move toward the door, but the townspeople were ready. Dr. Williams and 2 younger men grabbed him, forcing him down onto a chair. Linda quickly wrapped his wrists with kitchen twine from behind the counter. "It's over," Judge Martinez announced, already dialing the state police. "The truth's out now." Royce lay still where Marcus had left him, the fight completely drained from his body. Jasmine retrieved her handcuffs and secured him properly, reciting his rights in a clear, steady voice. The diner's door burst open as Sheriff Davis rushed in, summoned by multiple emergency calls. He took in the scene, his captain face down and subdued, his deputies restrained, and a room full of witnesses holding damning evidence. "Sheriff," Judge Martinez stepped forward, "you need to see this." She handed him the files, her expression stern. "Your department has some explaining to do." The sheriff's face grew increasingly grave as he flipped through the documents. His hands trembled slightly when he reached the papers about Samuel's frame-up. He looked up at the Carters, then back at his fallen officers. "Captain James Reynolds," he said formally, "you're under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, assault with a deadly weapon, and civil rights violations." He nodded to 2 deputies who had followed him in. "Take them all into custody." As the officers were led away, the mood in the diner shifted. Reverend Thompson approached Samuel and Evelyn, tears in his eyes. "We should have known better," he said softly. "Should have stood with you back then. Can you ever forgive us?" Other elders gathered around, decades of misunderstanding finally clearing. Mrs. Peterson, who had lived next door to the Carters for 30 years, hugged Evelyn tightly. "We let fear and lies divide us," she whispered. "Never again." Dr. Williams shook Samuel's hand firmly. "You were always a man of honor," he declared. "We just forgot how to recognize it." Jasmine watched the scene unfold, then stepped forward to address the crowd. "This is just the beginning," she promised. "We're going to rebuild this department from the ground up. No more corruption, no more prejudice. I give you my word." Linda moved through the group, offering tissues and gentle touches of comfort. The morning sun now filled the diner completely, warming the worn vinyl booths and gleaming off the chrome fixtures. The same light that had witnessed so much injustice now illuminated the path to healing. Marcus finally relaxed his combat-ready stance, moving to stand beside his parents. Samuel's eyes were bright with unshed tears as neighbors approached one by one, offering apologies and embraces. Evelyn held his hand tightly, her other hand reaching for Marcus's arm, anchoring their family together. The state police arrived, collecting evidence and taking statements. Through it all, the Carters maintained their dignity, answering questions with the same grace they had shown through years of suspicion and pain. Hours later, as the sun began to set, the diner had emptied except for a small group in the corner booth. Linda brought out fresh coffee and her famous peach cobbler, setting it before the Carters, Marcus, and Jasmine. The day's tension had faded into exhausted relief. The quiet clink of spoons against dishes filled the peaceful silence. Through the windows, they could see neighbors still gathered on the sidewalk, talking in low voices, processing the day's revelations. The diner's neon sign flickered to life as dusk approached, casting a warm glow over their small gathering. Jasmine sat beside Marcus, both still alert, but finally allowing themselves to relax. Linda pulled up a chair at the end of the table, her presence as comforting as always. The five of them shared this moment of victory and vindication, each lost in their own thoughts about the battles won and the changes to come. The next morning dawned bright and clear over Main Street. Samuel and Evelyn Carter walked hand in hand along the familiar sidewalk, their son Marcus keeping pace beside them. The morning air felt different somehow, lighter, clearer, like the truth had cleaned away decades of shadows. Mrs. Peterson waved warmly from her front porch. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" she called out, her smile genuine. The Carters waved back, no tension in their shoulders, no wariness in their eyes. "Sure is," Samuel replied, his voice strong and clear. They passed Thompson's Hardware, where old Mr. Thompson straightened from arranging his window display to offer a respectful nod. "Morning, Carters," he said, then added with meaning, "All of you." Marcus acknowledged the greeting with a slight smile. He stayed alert, but relaxed, his military bearing softened by the peace of the moment. His parents walked with newfound confidence, Samuel's steps measured and proud, Evelyn's grace untouched by yesterday's fear. Outside the courthouse, they spotted Sheriff Davis giving a press conference. The morning news crews had their cameras trained on him as he detailed the arrests and charges. "Former Captain Reynolds faces multiple felony counts," the sheriff was saying, his voice carrying across the square. "Deputies Royce and Henderson have been terminated and are being charged with civil rights violations, assault, and conspiracy. The state police investigation has already uncovered evidence of systematic discrimination going back years." The Carters paused to listen, not hiding in the shadows this time. Several townspeople gathered nearby offered supportive smiles and gentle touches to Evelyn's shoulder or Samuel's arm. "The department will undergo a complete review," the sheriff continued. "Officer Jasmine Lee has been promoted to detective and will head our newly formed Internal Affairs Division. We're committed to earning back the community's trust." As if on cue, Jasmine emerged from the courthouse, now wearing detective's insignia. She spotted the Carters and hurried over, beaming. "Just finished booking the last one," she told them quietly. "Reynolds is looking at 20 years minimum. The others are already offering to testify against him for plea deals." "Good," Marcus said simply, his jaw set. They continued their walk toward the diner, where a small crowd had already gathered. Linda stood at the entrance, directing people inside where tables had been pushed together to make room. A hand-painted banner read, "Honor, Truth, Justice," in careful letters. Judge Martinez met them at the door. "We wanted to do this right," she explained, ushering them in. "The whole town needs to acknowledge what happened, both yesterday and 50 years ago." The diner was packed with familiar faces, neighbors, church members, shopkeepers, and city officials. Dr. Williams stood at the counter, which had been cleared to serve as a podium. As the Carters entered, everyone rose to their feet. "Samuel and Evelyn Carter, Dr. Williams began, his voice thick with emotion. "We gather today to honor your courage, your dignity, and your unwavering faith in justice. We also gather to apologize for doubting, for staying silent, for letting fear divide us." Evelyn squeezed Samuel's hand as several people nodded tearfully. Marcus stood tall behind his parents, a quiet guardian as always. To Marcus Carter, Dr. Williams continued, "We thank you for showing us what true strength looks like, not just in protecting your family, but in helping expose the truth that needed to come to light." Linda stepped forward with 3 small plaques, each engraved with words about courage and perseverance. "These aren't much," she said softly, "but we wanted you to have something tangible to mark this new beginning." One by one, people came forward to shake hands, offer hugs, share memories. Mrs. Peterson reminded everyone how Samuel had helped rebuild her porch after a storm, never asking for payment. Reverend Thompson spoke about Evelyn's years teaching Sunday school, shaping young minds with gentle wisdom. The ceremony wasn't long or formal, but it carried weight. Each handshake represented bridges being rebuilt. Each embrace acknowledged years of unspoken pain finally being healed. Jasmine, standing near the door in her new detective's uniform, watched with satisfaction as the community came together. She caught Marcus's eye and nodded. They both knew their work wasn't finished, but this was a solid start. Linda served coffee and her famous morning pastries, the familiar routine bringing comfort to the gathering. People lingered, sharing stories and making plans. The diner hummed with conversation and laughter. No tension, no divided seating, no suspicious glances. As the morning wore on, Samuel and Evelyn found themselves in their usual booth, now surrounded by friends old and new. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the silver in their hair, highlighting the proud set of their shoulders. "Ready for a walk, my love?" Samuel asked Evelyn softly, as the gathering began to disperse. She smiled, that full, unguarded smile he'd fallen in love with so many years ago. "With you? Always." They stood together, arms linked naturally. Decades of practice had made them graceful in their movements, each compensating for the other's rhythm. The diner's bell chimed as they stepped out into the morning light. The town stretched before them, familiar streets now freed from old shadows. Each step they took was steady, unhurried, matched to each other's pace. This was their home, had always been their home, but now, finally, it felt like one. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have hand-picked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.